Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I have a philosophical commentary for you about why we as human beings latch on to simple ideas instead of complex ones, and the importance and the difference between the two. The gameplay you're going to get to see right now is me using the ARX160 in Search and Destroy, which is a gun I often don't use and a game type that I often don't play. Thought I'd kind of throw you off a little bit here. And then we're going to swap over to Black Ops 2 and then maybe a few other things as needed. But I was wondering the other day why we as human beings always latch on to really simple ideas even if they aren't true. Even if we sometimes know the ideas aren't true, we latch onto them anyway and talk about them as if they are truth, and this radically changes the dynamic around our world and makes it a less logical and more crazy place, and oftentimes it's for the worse. Sometimes simple ideas work, they're heuristics, they're for the better, but more often than not it's for the worse. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. We'll start with an urban legend. Eating before you swim will cause death. Now this is taken to extremes. Some people literally believe that if you eat and you go swim you're going to die, or that you can't swim at all. More often than not it's drowning, and for those of you a little more educated, you'll know that eating can cause cramps. This isn't really that true. The rule was kind of invented a long time ago to keep people from bringing food and drink to the pool. Now it's true, if you eat a whole ton of food and go swimming, it's not good for you, and it can cause death and drowning if you're swimming in the ocean, but the core idea itself isn't really true. It's not really going to hurt you to eat a candy bar or sandwich and go hop in the pool. Or another fun one, another urban myth, a cop will have to identify themselves as a cop if you ask them similar to entrapment, like an undercover like you can't be charged if you ask a cop if he's a cop and he says no and then you do something illegal. That's completely untrue, but it has a certain logic to it and we accept it as truth. Or genetically modified food is bad for you. Most of the science and evidence that we have points toward the opposite, even the independent studies, but in our heads we latch onto this idea of genetically modified and we think about Frankenstein and mutants and aliens and weird defects and birth defects and stuff like that, and it hits us at an emotional level and we don't like it. Or we can move this up in layers of complexity of simple versus complex. We'll talk about the economy. A very common belief is, amongst economists and people in general, raising the minimum wage causes unemployment. Now, in a very simple XY economic model of the labor market and, supply, demand, all that sort of stuff, if you add an artificial buffer in there, you lose people. People can't be hired and there's unemployment. And that's true, but the reality is that our markets are more complex than that, or some places it might cause unemployment, some places it might not. Who are going to be unemployed? Is it like career earners at like career people, or just kind of college students, or whatever? It's who you're hurting. Lots of factors there. Or global warming is or isn't real for a whole variety of different reasons on other side. A lot of people like to boil it down to one core fact, like disprove this one XY relationship and you've blown the whole thing out of the water. It's not really like that. It's a whole complex thing about pollution and environmental change, but we believe these sort of simple truths instead of the real complex ones for a variety of reasons. I'll throw in one random fun one before you move on. It's a shopping heuristic. It's a little habit that most of the people have. When we see the bigger bags that say value or save or family size or whatever, we always assume, because we've seen it since we're little and because we can do simple comparisons, that the bigger bulk items are always going to be the cheaper ones or the better value, the more for your money. And most of the time this is true, but it's not a hard or set fact. Sometimes it's the other way around, and this is how, more clever people can take advantage of you. They can put a smaller product in a bigger box and sell it at the same price, and people buy it thinking they're getting more because they're just relying on these short, simple relationships. The reason for this is, and this goes way, way, way back in time, to the fact that we are social creatures. We exist in a community of others. Even if you're a hermit and you live alone, you're watching this video, so you're reaching out to people in some kind of fashion like that. But most of us, we have family that we interact with, friends, society, work. We really do work together a lot, and the reason for this is because we can communicate in ways that other animals can't, and one of our core methods of communication is storytelling. One of the things that is hardwired into our human brains is the ability to tell a story and to listen to a story and understand its meaning on several different levels. Storytelling has been used for a long time to teach moral truths, to teach survival skills, to teach all sorts of different little lessons, and people learn different things from it. And there's a long way to tell a story with a complex cast of characters and range of emotions and things that are happening, and there's a short way to tell a story. Think like abridged of books or DBZ abridged or something like that. But when we recall the story, we almost always think about it in the short version. Guy did X, Y happened, this was the moral, if you do this thing you'll live, if you do that thing you'll die. And we learn like this, and I mean we really like this XY relationship. One thing causes another thing every single time, and it makes the world simpler for our minds to understand. It's way easier to remember, and oftentimes the rules aren't bad, but sometimes they are, and it leads us kind of astray. And I can do this kind of like, if you work longer, you'll make more money. More hours, more work, more money. Okay, we can go with that one. It sounds pretty logical. Drinking vitamin water can mean that you're making healthier choices in your life. Or if you see a bear, the bear is dangerous. That's a pretty simple XY relationship, and we are genetically programmed to remember things this way, even if it's not true. Looking at the exact same examples, you can say, well, working longer hours means that you make more money, but what's your quality of life like? The reason you work is to make more money so that you can enjoy your leisure time more or buy nice things, but if you're working more hours, you have less leisure time and less time to enjoy your nice things, or maybe it's hard on your body, or maybe you should be working smarter, differently, different position. There's a whole bunch of different things, because what you're really trying to do is improve your quality of life, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the XY relationship of hours worked and money made. I'm picking on vitamin water a little bit because it's an egregious offender, but you could use almost any sort of drink. People drink vitamin water and think it's a healthy choice, and that might be true for one vitamin water every now and then, or it might not even be true at all, because vitamin water has high fructose corn syrup or sugars, several variety of sugars. It has some electrolytes, some vitamins we need, some vitamins we don't. Is it really better? Does your body even ingest them this way? There's like dozens and dozens of studies about this. If I'm not mistaken, in the UK, Coca-Cola was sued for marketing it as a health drink, and then they had to go back and market it as a soda or soft drink. I don't remember the exact nature of the lawsuit, but there's a whole variety of complex biological and, nutrition reasons why drinking vitamin water might not make you a healthy person, but we don't think about it that way. Or even in the case of the bear, the simplest example, bears are dangerous, right? I even agree with this. I'm not getting close to a bear, but a bear is dangerous only if you're too close, if you invade its space, or if there's cubs around, or if you have food on you, or depending on the season, the bear's moods will change radically, or especially depending on the type of the bear or on the individual bear. And there's a dozen different, situational factors that can make the bear dangerous or not dangerous. But the simple XY is, well, bear's dangerous, I should avoid it. And that makes sense. That's a good thing. That's a good heuristic for a lot of people. It keeps you safe. But we make this mistake a lot of other places. You'll see this pop up in political campaigns. That's a big one. And it doesn't really matter which party. They both do the same thing. They'll tell you that taxing this thing or not taxing this thing will immediately impact the economy exactly and directly in these ways, or legislating this piece of morality or social law will change the dynamic of our whole country and cause it to either get better or worse for various reasons, or you'll get richer or poorer with this candidate. And it's pitched as a hard XY, as a true fact for you to latch onto and kind of associate with that person. It's a good marketing strategy, a good political strategy for them, but it's ultimately untrue. You see this in diet and exercise quite a lot, more often with the fad things, like the eat all of this and you'll get healthy, don't eat this at all and you'll get healthy, this is bad, that's bad, this exercise is better than the other one. And really it's your body is way more complex than that. Dieting and exercise is way more complex than that. There's so many other little factors going on that just saying this absolutely works and everybody should definitely do this. No, come on, that's bogus. This even shows up in our common science education. Like some of the stories in children's textbooks that explain science or scientific principles aren't really that accurate. They're kind of like short versions. I can pick on gravity. Gravity, even all the way up through college and training to be an engineer and stuff, is taught as a pretty straightforward equation and an attraction. The reality is that when you get into the real physics behind gravity, it's infinitely more complex than that. It's such a complicated topic that people are still studying it, but on our end, our little simple models hold up. Or there's some goofy ones about conservation of momentum, which isn't really a thing. Momentum isn't. You conserve energy and matter, mass more specifically. Lots of little things like this show up, or even in relationships. This is another one where people like to take a relationship, which is an extremely complicated thing because you have two people of different backgrounds, different egos and emotions colliding and trying to work together. Not colliding is the wrong word, colluding. Colluding's probably a better word than that. Trying to work together, that sort of thing. But they like to think, if only I were prettier, my relationship would be better. If only I worked harder, if only I bought my girlfriend this thing, or if the girl think if only I cooked my husband or boyfriend this thing, then everything will be better. And of course it's not that simple. It's so much more complex than this. And I think that in general, we as human beings are just hardwired toward the simple stuff, and that we need to kind of grow away from that. And I think that the world is far, far more complex than XY relationships. Yes, XY is good for a simple study. It's good for understanding how things work. You want to run a couple of them so you can study X, Y, Z, and kappa, delta, gamma, what are all the little variables. It doesn't really matter. But we need to stop pretending that we know everything about everything, or knowing one fact or knowing one single relationship makes us experts on the entire field, because of course it doesn't. There's lots of unknowns, and we need to be comfortable with these unknowns. We need to accept that we don't know things, and accept that there's wiggle rooms and exceptions and other sort of things going on. Also, if you have kids, I would tell you to teach them critical thinking early. Critical thinking is good, and don't do the hard reinforcement of do X, get Y, because it's kind of a shortcut in thinking. It'll make them a little bit daft later on in life. And I encourage all of you to take a look around at the big, glorious, beautiful world around you and enjoy its complexity. Drifter out.